Welcome to the next installment of Lovins Reads Lovecraft. Today, I brought over another plastic milk crate. Got that on the sidewalk. Street people use them to sit on all day long, but I need it more than they do right now. I brought over two things. First is this recently acquired swipe Simon. Let's see if we get some power. It's pretty cool. I don't know how it works. You have to use a swipe. Well, twice. That's pretty cool. Alright. And the second item is this huge book. One of my favorite artists. Used to be anyway. Robert Rauschenberg, a retrospective. His work really turned me on when I saw it in LA County Museum of Art. Big alcoholic in New York. Very famous, very young in the New York art scene. And if I asked 100 people in San Francisco on the street who he was, no one would know, unless I came across an art student, and even then they wouldn't know. When I was in art school at the San Francisco Art Institute, students didn't even know who Toulouse-Lautrec was. Just outside their realm of caring. If it's not on a headphone, it's not worth knowing about, right? Huge book. I really have to give it a good look. Oh, damn page came out. Oh, Basquiat. I have a brother. Saw the Basquiat show in LA. Didn't like the work. Didn't get it. But I love Basquiat's work. I think it's fantastic. It's a language. Now that I've wasted 3 minutes of your precious time, get back to the Lovecraft thing. Okay. Guess I could try this. I can show the lines that I read. I thereafter saw Johnson very frequently, most often at meetings of the Literary Club, which was founded the next year by the Doctor, together with Mr. Burke, the parliamentary orator, Mr. Beauclerk, a gentleman of fashion, Mr. Langton, a pious man and captain of militia, Sir J. Reynolds, the widely known painter, Dr. Goldsmith, the prose and poetic writer, Dr. Nugent, father-in-law to Mr. Burke, Sir John Hawkins, Mr. Anthony Chamier, and myself. We assemble generally at 7 o'clock of an evening, once a week, at the Turk's Head in Gerrard Street, Soho, till that tavern was sold and made into a private dwelling, after which event we moved our gatherings successively to Prince's in Sackville Street, Letelliers in Dover Street, and Parslow's and the Thatched House in St. James Street. In these meetings we preserved a remarkable degree of amity and tranquility, which contrasts very favorably with some of the dissensions and disruptions I observe in the literary and amateur press associations of today. This tranquility was the more remarkable because we had amongst us gentlemen of very opposed opinions. Dr. Johnson and I, as well as many others, were high Tories, whilst Mr. Burke was a Whig and against the American War, many of his speeches on that subject having been widely published. The least congenial member was one of the founders, Sir John Hawkins, who hath since written many misrepresentations of our society. Sir John, an eccentric fellow, once declined to pay his part of the reckoning for supper, because 'twas his custom at home to eat no supper. Later, he insulted Mr. Burke in so intolerable a manner that we all took pains to show our disapproval, after which incident he came no more to our meetings. However, he never openly fell out with the doctor, and was the executor of his will, though Mr. Boswell and others have reason to question the genuineness of his attachment. Other and later members of the club were Mr. David Garrick, the actor and early friend of Dr. Johnson, Messieurs Though and Joss Wharton, Dr. Adam Smith, Dr. Percy, author of the Reliquies, Mr. Edward Gibbon, the historian, Dr. Burney, the musician, Mr. Malone, the critic, and Mr. Boswell. Mr. Garrick obtained admittance only with difficulty, for the doctor, notwithstanding his great friendship, was forever affecting to decry the stage and all things connected with it. Johnson, indeed, had a most singular habit of speaking for Davy when others were against him, and of arguing against him when others were for him. I have no doubt but that he sincerely loved Mr. Garrick, for he never alluded to him as he did to Foote, F-O-O-T-E, who was a very coarse fellow, despite his comic genius. Mr. Gibbon was none too well liked, for he had an odious sneering way, which offended even those of us who most admired his historical productions. Mr. Goldsmith, a little man very vain of his dress and very deficient in brilliancy of conversation, was my particular favorite, since I was equally unable to shine in the discourse. He was vastly jealous of Dr. Johnson, though none the less liking and respecting him. I remember that once a foreigner, a German, I think, was in our company, and that whilst Goldsmith was speaking, he observed the doctor preparing to utter something, unconsciously looking upon Goldsmith as a mere encumbrance when compared to the greater man. The foreigner bluntly interrupted him and incurred his lasting hostility by crying, "Hush, Dr. Johnson is going to speak." In this luminous company I was tolerated more because of my years than for my wit or learning. Being no match at all for the rest, my friendship for the celebrated Monsieur Voltaire was ever a cause of annoyance to the doctor, who was deeply orthodox, and who used to say of the French philosopher, "Verest seremi ingeni et parcarum literarum." Mr. Boswell, a little teasing fellow whom I had known for some time previously, used to make sport of my awkward manners and old-fashioned wig and clothes. Once coming in a little the worse for wine, to which he was addicted, he endeavored to lampoon me by means of an impromptu in verse writ on the surface of the table, but lacking the aid he usually had in his composition, he made a bad grammatical blunder. This is funny. I've listened to this on audiobook. Lovecraft was a grammar Nazi. That's what they call it in online games. To continue, I told him he should not try to pasquinade the source of his poesy. At another time, Bozzy, as we used to call him, complained of my harshness toward new writers in the articles I prepared for the monthly review. He said, I pushed every aspirant off the slopes of Parnassus. Sir, I replied, you are mistaken. They who lose their hold do so from their own want of strength. But desiring to conceal their weakness, they attribute the absence of success to the first critic that mentions them. I am glad to recall that Dr. Johnson upheld me in this matter. Dr. Johnson was second to no man in the pains he took to revise the bad verses of others. Indeed, 'tis said that in the book of poor blind old Mrs. Williams, there are scarce 2 lines which are not the doctor's. At one time, Johnson recited to me some lines by a servant to the Duke of Leeds, which had so amused him that he had got them by heart. They are on the Duke's wedding, and so much resemble in quality the work of other and more recent poetic dunces, that I cannot forbear copying them. When the Duke of Leeds shall married be to a fine young lady of high quality, how happy will that gentle woman be in his Grace of Leeds' good company. I asked the doctor if he had ever tried making sense of this piece, and upon his saying he had not, I amused myself with the following amendment of it. When gallant Leeds auspiciously shall wed the virtuous fair of ancient lineage bred, how must the maid rejoice with conscious pride to win so great an husband to her side. On showing this to Dr. Johnson, he said, Sir, you have straightened out the feet, but you have put neither wit nor poetry into the lines. It would afford me gratification to tell more of my experiences with Dr. Johnson and his circle of wits, but I am an old man, and easily fatigued. I seem to ramble along without much logic or continuity when I endeavor to recall the past, and fear I light upon but few incidents which others have not before discussed. Should my present recollections meet with favor, I might later set down some further anecdotes of old times, of which I am the only survivor. I recall many things of Sam Johnson and his club, having kept up my membership in the latter long after the doctor's death, at which I sincerely mourned. I remember how John Burgione, Esquire the General, whose dramatic and poetical works were printed after his death, was blackballed by 3 votes, probably because of his unfortunate defeat in the American War at Saratoga. Poor John, his son fared better, I think, and was made a baronet. But I am very tired. I am old, very old, and it is time for my afternoon nap. That was the end of A Reminiscence of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Next episode, we'll dig into Polaris, written in May or June of 1918. Thanks for listening.